This is a podcast from the Angel News Network with author Joel Anastasi interviewing Ascended Master Saint Germain as channeled by Philip Elton Collins.
Greetings, beloved friends. I come to you from the frequency, the level of consciousness known in the Ascended Mastership realm is Saint Germain. I come to you at the time in the midst of your presidential election. Your elections here in the United States of America are not just about America. It's also about healing everyone on the planet. Remember, infinite patience delivers positive results. Your diversity within the United States of America reflects all of the diversity of humanity. Thus, you are an experiment in the majority of the population of the planet healing their wounds and their ego defenses. It is important that you remember that. It is important that you remember that what you resist persists. It is essential that you trust and be patient in the great cosmic law of ascension. Remember, it is working for your benefit through the violet flame and the I am presence at all times. I was so disappointed many, many times in my incarnational cycles when people didn't believe me and they mocked me in my many lifetimes. They did not stop with personal persecution, but I committed to my individual ascension process no matter what was happening outside of me, allowing nothing outside of me to deter you. That is your inner growth and task at hand at will. It is also important, beloved students, the channel that we're coming through and the colleague who is listening and interviewing, that you do not underestimate the importance of the work we have done together. The books that we have done together, the trips to Mount Shasta, all of this is allowing the new energies to come in, assisting your healing of your nation and the entire human species. It is important that you trust and never doubt that all is in divine order. Be aware where fear, doubt, and ignorance can come into the mix and interrupt the divine order of the universe. Our divine soul has received the divine soul who is your presidential candidate has received more votes than any other divine soul within the presidential election history in America. Pay attention to that. Let us begin.
Good morning, Saint Germain. Thank you for joining us today. We need your clarity.
That is why I have begun with these opening statements. These opening statements are the foundation of all clarity.
Well, thanks for those opening statements. Just to be clear, this is Thursday morning, November 5th, 2 days after the election, which occurred 2 days ago. And we still don't know who our president is going to be. There are indications that it's trending towards Joseph Biden, but we're not really sure about that. So a lot of people who we're concerned about the direction Donald Trump has taken America are very concerned that we may not be rid of him yet. So thanks for your perspectives.
And let us discuss the possibility of not being rid in your vernacular of this. And realize it is a time of patience. It is a time of knowing the application of the violet flame, of the I am present within the process. And that one of the areas of patience that is required, again, to repeat earlier statements, is you're healing all of the aspects of humanity globally, because the United States of America represents the diversity of everyone. So it isn't just this nation that is taking place. And it is important that you understand how the wounding within the individuals who do not support the democratic process are taking place by the original manipulation of the human genes. And that is new information for some, unbelievable for many, but that must be factored into current events.
Well, before we go into that direction, which is a whole conversation in itself, many of us do wonder how the re-election of Donald Trump would contribute to the healing of all of humanity.
It is the part of the healing process to bring up the wounds and the ego defenses of humanity. He is a personification of those wounds, and those who resonate with it and see themselves worth enough and good enough because he's just like me, it can be a healing process for the planet if necessary. You will soon realize whether that needs to continue or not. The question is, are you ready to accept either outcome and not have it affect your individuated soul plans and your individuated ascension processes?
Well, you've just posed an important question, haven't you? And I'm not even sure I know how to answer that for myself. Am I ready to accept either outcome? I know you've told us many, many times that we need to be able to do that. What that's suggesting to me is that there's a lot more growth in consciousness that I certainly have to experience to be able to say, yes, I am ready to accept either outcome.
That is the mission. Those are the laws of manifestation, having no expectation for results. Yes, as a human being, you can have a preference, but do not allow the preference to become a dictation of what has to be. That will build resistance, and what you resist will persist.
Well, you're certainly aware, I know, that many of us are very disappointed. We were hoping that there would be a massive repudiation of Donald Trump for not only his mishandling of the pandemic, but his apparent disdain for the rule of law and the damage he has done to the structure of our democracy, and it did not happen.
Dear one, more people voted in this election than any other election prior to recorded time. More individuals have voted for your Democratic candidate, the one you call Biden, than ever before for any other candidate. That has already taken place.
Yes, absolutely. And as you point out many times, we have to focus on what is, not what is not. And that is plenty to celebrate.
Indeed. To eliminate doubt, to eliminate ignorance.
Well, you've told us many times, we started talking about 4 years ago, and you told us that we would be entering a period of chaos, but you said chaos was an essential part of the cosmic clearing to create something new. And you said that if the United States was to achieve its mission of bringing all of humanity together in wholeness, that our democracy had to be reinvigorated, and that Donald Trump would, because of the threat he would represent to our democracy, that he would trigger an awakening. And that awakening has certainly happened because, as you just pointed out, we've had an unprecedented percentage of the American population vote. And as you pointed out, the biggest number who have ever voted for a winning candidate. Let's hope he will be the winning candidate. But that's coming from me, my own personal view.
Let us affirm that whatever happens will be for the highest good and the needed learning tool for humanity, which the beacon of light, the United States of America, represents, since within your geographic boundaries contains all of the diversities of humanity. It is a sanctuary for all of that diversity.
You know, you've brought up the issue of wounding, and how so many people who are wounded are supporters of Trump. I've heard many commentators, especially many people of color who are professionals, who are essentially somewhat stunned by the amount of support that Trump has gotten. One asked, what are they voting for? Because there were so many policies and behaviors on Trump's part that were separating us and undermining our democracy. And of course, the answer has to do with the wounding, which you brought up early in our conversation.
Which is being exacerbated by the fear, doubt, and ignorance.
Well, then, obviously, the obvious question is, how our country is split almost 50-50, and wounding is an important part of that. So the question becomes, how do we address that, and how do we bring our people together?
By having a unified field of collective consciousness, which one of the candidates is perpetuating, rather than separation and confrontation.
Now, of course, if Mr. Trump wins, we don't get that.
If Mr. Trump, in your vernacular, wins, then you will continue the needed process of healing to learn the way you need to learn.
So where should we take this conversation from here? Because here's the dilemma. We don't know who's going to win.
So you're in the process of having to surrender to not knowing, which the ego mind wants to know. So let us surrender to not knowing, dear one, in order to allow all the probabilities and possibilities of the cosmic law of ascension, of the balance of giving, receiving, of the balance of the feminine, masculine energies to come forward, shall we?
Yes. You know, you and Archangel Michael have been talking about the high vibration energies that are flooding the earth planes to create a new evolutionary path of oneness. And many of us who are aware of that were invoking the violet flame, which is one of the highest energy forces we can draw on. What effect have these high vibration energies had on what we're experiencing now, if we're still even more divided than we were expecting?
We've discussed what the effect was. You've already had more people vote than ever before. You've had more people vote for one particular candidate who supports the democratic structure than ever before. That is a result of the application of the violet flame and the I Am Presence, dear one.
Well, that's certainly something to celebrate, isn't it?
It is.
So we've had 4 years of chaos, and that chaos is produced.
You've had 4 years of clearing and cleansing through that chaos that otherwise would not have been there. See this individual, the one you call Trump, as a Shakespearean character that we've discussed before, on the folly stage of humanity, strutting the wounds and the defenses of humanity before the world, before the nation, almost like a sacrificial lamb. That was his sole choice, to be this, in order to allow a more diversified Congress, a more diversified local governments than ever before. More people of color, of diversity, of the feminine energy, of coming forward, running for offices, being elected than ever before in the history of the United States of America. Let us be with that.
Well, you are redirecting our attention to a teaching that you stated in one of our first conversations back in December of 2016. I was very aware that you were referring to Donald Trump as a divine soul, and you were also talking about his divine mission, which was really to bring about the chaos that ultimately would lead to a clearing and cleansing that would bring humanity together in oneness and wholeness.
Then you see there are no enemies. There are no right or wrong. You see that each is playing a part for the divine order to take place, the divine order of the universe.
So the question now, as we wait for the final determination of the vote, is, do we need more chaos to have more clearing and cleansing, or have we learned our lessons and are we prepared to move forward in healing?
That is the question. So I shall read and remember from the Book of Dead of when I was in Egypt. I wrote and stated, or the Book of the Dead, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles contrary to the cosmic law of oneness. For such persons do not serve creation itself, but their own appetite and untruths and deceit. They only deceive the hearts and minds of the naïve. Let us awaken those who are asleep.
That would be a wonderful place to end, except that since you made a reference when I was in Egypt and I wrote the Book of the Dead. So what entity were you when you wrote that?
That entity is unimportant at this time. What is important at this time is that message. And it also, we can affirm in the name of all higher realms, affirm that the will of the negative, of what may be called the wicked, shall be removed from positions of power, prominence, and prestige. Let us open the hearts and minds of those being deceived and place people who serve the common good into the higher places of government and influence, and allow that to be, and so it is.
Well,
Dear one, know that you are at the beginning stages of the biggest collective awakening ever seen in the history of humanity. I shall repeat that. Know you are in the beginning stages of the biggest collective awakening ever seen in the history of humanity, as a result of the ascension process of the planet reflecting out into humanity. Truth and freedom can come in time if you are patient and receive the higher realm frequencies. And most importantly, dear ones, know that all is in divine order, with no fear, no doubt, no ignorance.
That is a powerful way for us to end this conversation, and you have suggested subjects for our future conversations.
One more thing. These higher energies that are coming in, one aspect of it is Lady Liberty, standing in your New York harbor. She is at work. Do not underestimate her being and her power within this process.
I think it's important to add that you have said in the past, she is not just a statue, she is a powerful spiritual being.
She is a goddess.
She is a goddess. Saint Germain, we're going to end this conversation. Do you want to add any last powerful thoughts for us?
Be with the affirmations from the Book of Dead. Be with the affirmation in the name of all higher realms affirming. Know that you are at the beginning of the biggest collective awakening ever seen in humanity. Have no fear, have no doubt, have no ignorance. And know that truth and freedom and the divine plan of this nation through the ascension process of the planet are divinely at work.
Thank you, Saint Germain.
You're welcome.